My name's Pete Woods and you're watching Hexham TV. Who are you?
Hi there, Pete. I'm Graham Soult and I'm the owner and retail consultant at cannyinsights.com based in Gateshead.
What is a retail consultant?
Well, I've been described by ITV as a Northeast Mary Portas. So if you know Mary Portas, all the Queen of Shops thing, it's a bit like that. I kind of go to places, I work with different towns and retailers and shopping centres, and try and help them really. And sometimes that's in terms of looking at what they offer and trying to improve that, and sometimes it's in terms of looking at their marketing and trying to spread the word around about all the good things that are out there already.
So I think you've just visited Hexham, Graham, although I think it's a place you probably know quite well anyway.
Yes.
What did you find?
Well, I've been going to Hexham for the last 10 or 12 years, I reckon. It's somewhere I enjoy going anyway, as on a weekend, because it's a nice place to go and have a mooch and enjoy some lunch and things. But it was nice to be there yesterday in a more kind of official capacity. So I've been invited by Hexham Town Council. So it was Alison Smith, who is both a town councillor and a shopkeeper in the town at Matthias Winter, and she had seen the work I was doing in Durham and Chesterley Street. And in those places, I'm involved quite heavily in working with local businesses and promoting the town. And she was keen to see what I could do for Hexham. And so our idea was to started off with what we called a bit grandiosely a town centre action planning workshop. So basically, in plain English, it involved bringing together key people who have a role to play in Hexham Town Centre. So it involved some town councillors, someone from the county council, someone from the Hexham Community Partnership, other community groups as well, and just even the act of getting all those people in one room at once is really good, because often it happens so infrequently, because everywhere I go, people are so busy, and sometimes even if we can facilitate getting all these town centre stakeholders in one room for a couple of hours, that in itself is really good, and the prompt for all kinds of conversations and ideas to be shared.
So how did it go, Graham?
It went really well. Yes, it went really well. It was all the stuff that I do is deliberately very positive. So all the kind of framing of the event was in terms of what is Hexham doing really well at the moment? What are the challenges? Okay, but of course there are challenges, but it was really focusing on what can we achieve if we all work together. What can we do now to make a positive difference? Because you can moan as much as you like about the Rob site and the bus station and parking and everything else, but ultimately there's not a lot of point in mulling over the same things. Often just by kind of throwing some ideas around and working in partnership, you can actually kind of do stuff on the ground that helps to bring people into the town now and starts to address all those lingering negative perceptions that almost every town has. If you go onto Facebook, every town you care to visit, there's always a Facebook group full of people moaning about the place. And actually, often towns like Hexham, aren't nearly as bad in real life as the Facebook portrayal would suggest. And so I like to kind of look at a place and build on the stuff that's really good.
Hexham's the happiest town in the country.
Yes, we talked about that. It came through in some of the desk research I did, and the kind of news coverage around the whole happy thing. And it's a great accolade. It's a great thing to be associated with. And I think we all felt that actually there's more you can do with that in terms of telling all kinds of different angles of how Hexham is a kind of happy and welcoming and an attractive place for everyone.
So is this about marketing Hexham as a town, or is it about infrastructure and sort of physical things, or is it a bit of both?
Yeah, it's all those things. I think in the work that I do all over the place, I often find that actually there's some issues around marketing messages. You know, it might be that in some cases you have places where they are doing some really good stuff, but maybe they aren't shouting about it enough, or you know, or they are shouting about it, but it just, you know, isn't getting through to people. So I think in Hexham's case, there's a lot of really good stuff that's already there. In particular, you know, it's got fantastic green spaces. It's got an incredible heritage. It's got a really strong independent retail offer too. And I think sometimes it can be quite useful to bring someone external in who isn't kind of in the place all the time. And often I find myself saying to the towns that I work, you know, have you realized how good that is? As actually you don't always know kind of how good the things that you have are. And you know, it's a silly thing in a way, but Hexham, you know, one of the things that I go to Hexham for is Waitrose, to be honest, you know, because it's one of the only Waitroses in the northeast, and certainly the biggest one, you know, and I'm sure there are other people who go to Hexham for Waitrose and then tack on other things like having a walk or having lunch or having a look around the other shops. So, you know, all those silly things can be actually a really important reason why people visit your town.
When you're looking at a town and you're looking at the whole of the town, how do you make sure that what's done or how it's changed involves everybody? Not just perhaps, you know, some powerful groups, you know, that there are in any town, or some powerful individuals. How do you make sure that everyone's involved and everyone sort of has an opportunity to have their say about future development?
Yeah, it's a really important question, and often the challenge in place. And sometimes you do have you know, all kinds of baggage and politics and history and things going on in places that often I have to try and kind of unpack and navigate in order to achieve what I want. But actually, in Hexham, you know, it was really refreshing to see yesterday such a great mix of people. You know, often with these things, you get a meeting that is full of people from the council and not enough from the community. And it was really nice that in the one yesterday we had churches together, we had the civic society, we had the community partnership, we had business interests. You know, it was a really good mix. And I think it's impossible to get everyone, you know, it's impossible to get everyone from the town all in one room at once. But if you get the right kind of key players, they themselves then have their networks, and you build up this kind of web almost of all the interests, so that hopefully almost every person in the town is only a kind of step or two away from the hub. And it was quite nice, even before the meeting, Alice and the town council did a post on Facebook asking people kind of what one change would make them more likely to come into Hexham more often. And that was, you know, it was deliberately framed in a constructive and positive way. And of course, you got you know, all the usual comments about parking and congestion and the Rob site and the bus station and some of the kind of grot spots that really do need to be sorted. But equally, it was really heartening to see people kind of sharing their ideas of things they would like to see more of, you know, and being really positive about the independent shops and some of the events that go on and the warmth of the town and all that kind of thing. So I think you know, I'm a big believer in using the power of social media as well in a positive and constructive way to involve people.
And how important is transport when you're looking at sort of trying to revitalise or regenerate a town? You know, both the fact that people who don't have cars can get there and get home at a reasonable time for a reasonable cost, and also that people can travel from the town to other places and get back. You know, we're very near Hadrian's Wall, for instance. We're lucky to have a bus service that goes up there during the summer. How important is transport to revitalise towns?
I think transport is crucial, really, and it's. I would say, everywhere that I work, transport is important, but obviously everywhere is different. And so Hexham, in many ways, is quite well connected for a town, in the countryside. It's for a market town like that, it's quite well connected in terms of its road length and its railway. But obviously, you have the kind of wider Tynedale catchment, and clearly there are some people in some of the villages around who maybe find it really hard to get into Hexham by any mode other than car. So it's constantly a case of trying to look at all the different needs, making sure that no one group is excluded at the expense of another. And certainly one of the things we were talking about, for example, is cycle routes and how you can knit Hexham more readily, into some of the cycle corridors and things that are round about, because it's quite well linked to many of these things, but some of the routes I think kind of bypass the town, or aren't quite right in terms of the quality of experience. So I'm a big fan of cycle links. I'm a big fan of making places more walkable as well. And again, Hexham is a nice place to wander around. Maybe there are some areas where in the future you can look at the balance of cars and people and think, actually, we could do with a bit more public space here and a bit less traffic, for example. And it was quite telling that someone on my Twitter yesterday had said, I really think they ought to pedestrianise the marketplace. And I know it's an issue that is often raised. And then only yesterday, a car drove into the shambles, I think, and knocked one of the columns over. So it kind of made the point in a way that, in some respects, having that as a more pedestrian space, might have benefits beyond those that we thought.
So what do you think, if you were to sort of say 2 or 3 things that came out of the day yesterday that can be positively taken forward, in the sort of short to medium term, what do you think those 2 or 3 things were?
Yeah, we spoke quite a lot about events, because events, are a great way of bringing people into a town, and in the kind of place management speak, we call it animation. So all that stuff that kind of brings a bit of life and activity to a place and encourages people in. And obviously, kind of Hexham is quite well equipped in that regard already. It does have things on the bandstand and the kind of farmers market and that kind of thing going on. But I think we spoke at length about what kind of ideas might be appropriate to bring more different people into the town, to encourage young people and families as well, because again, often in these places you find that it's maybe the older folks who are coming into the town to kind of do the things they've always done, and maybe it's for younger people or for families, it might not be a place where they feel like there's anything for them, or particularly anything for them that is affordable or even free. And certainly the cost of living thing was something that kind of underpinned our conversations too, because you don't want to only offer events and activities that are available to those who can afford it.
Empty shops is a big thing in most town centres. What can be done locally about business rates or landlords that let their premises go into disrepair and perhaps bring the look of the place down, because people are attracted by the general sort of ambience, the look of the place when they arrive. And if there's lots of empty shops, or places are looking very run down, it's off-putting.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you've highlighted some of the kind of big challenges there that the high streets are facing all over the place. And there's only so much you can do with kind of making sure that your streets are kind of hosed down and clean, and your flowers are in place. After a while, you still need to kind of have things happening behind the flowers and behind the clean streets. And I think you're right about the business rates issue. It's something that keeps being raised all the time. It's not something that I or local councils can control, because it's all set from government. And certainly, I've been using the networks that I'm part of to kind of to make sure that I feed that back, as I am involved in the government's High Streets Task Force. And one of the things that I keep hearing on those visits too is that business rates are a real barrier. And I know from my own work in Durham as well that business rates are a barrier. As landlords actually are often being flexible these days. You can get some quite good deals on properties. As landlords are being more realistic in many cases about the rents. They're being more realistic about the length of lease too. So whereas in the past, you may have had a lease for 10, 20 years. Now these days it might be a 3 or 5 year lease with a break clause partway through. But in terms of properties kind of bringing a town down, I think Hexham does have an issue with that at the moment. As you wander around, and of course, everyone sees the old bus station, they see the back of Rob's or Beale's, and there's a few properties that are really kind of not helpful in terms of those first impressions. But I think it's positive to see a few things happening. So, for example, you'll be aware of the Hexham High Street Heritage Action Zone, or HAZAZ as we call it in the jargon, HSHAZ, and that's focusing, I think, on Priest Poplar and Battle Hill, and is designed to it supports landlords in bringing vacant or underused properties back into use, at the same time also as putting back more appropriate shop fronts and things. Sometimes you might have a building that is in use but actually has a really horrible shop front that doesn't bear any historic relation to the floors above it. And I've been involved in work in Reading and in Weston-super-Mare, where some buildings have had new shop fronts put in that have really transformed their curb appeal and transformed their impact on the street in a positive way. I think we saw yesterday that the Coach and Horses is being taken over as well by the owners of the county opposite. So that's a really important thing, because that as well is one of the big grot spots, on the main way into Hexham. So I think, in a way, I was saying yesterday at the event that you can't force landlords to do these things. You can't force the owners of the bus station site to finally get on and do something with it. You can't force the owners of the Beale site to come forward with their plans for redeveloping it. But in a way, if you focus on controlling and influencing the things that you can control and making a positive difference there, it can't do any harm in hopefully spurring on those kind of other more expensive things that are out of your hands.
And do you think in the future that there'll be a different mix on the high street? It's not just the shops at the ground floor level, it's the buildings above, sometimes sort of 2 or 3 stories. Do you think there's an opportunity there to make use of perhaps what was a shop storeroom or something like that, turn it into something different? Yeah,
again, it was a theme that emerged yesterday as well, because I shared some stats that I had that showed that I think roughly just over half of the buildings in the town centre were in retail use, 15% or thereabouts is hospitality, and only a very small percentage, about 1%, is housing. And I think certainly what is the case in Hexham and many other places is that you can do more with those vacant upper floors, with some of the areas around around the back and the side of the town to kind of bring housing in, because it's a good use of space, and it also starts to create more activity and more people there to then spend money in the businesses. And also, of course, if you have a town centre where after dark no one is there, no one is living there, it can be a place that isn't always very safe or welcoming. So again, if you have people living above the shop, it starts to make it a much more warm and safe and attractive place in the evening. So I was pleased to see the work going on. I think is it Prospect House, the old council building, and so that is being turned, I think, into housing, and there's an element of new build there too, which is really it's really well done. And of course, I think a previous talk about what might happen to the Beals site has focused on the scope there for it to be a mixed use scheme of some kind, because I think the chances of Beals being redeveloped for retail is fairly slim. Part of it will, I'm sure, be retail, but it won't account for the amount of retail that it has done historically, because it just isn't sustainable. And in fact, it would be really good if you could bring more of a mix of uses in there, some housing, some offices, some leisure maybe, and you start to kind of generate that kind of buzz all through the day and the evening.
What do you say to the people in a town like Hexham, where, as you say, we're lucky enough to have a number of different supermarkets, but a lot of them are focused around the entrance, one of the main entrances to the town, and that the supermarkets actually draw all the economy away from the local traders. That people come, they perhaps park there, they can get what they want, and then they're back on the road again. What do you say to those people who say, look, how many supermarkets do we need? What we need is small shops, independents, people offering something that is perhaps unique or not found in another town.
Yeah, on the face of it, you might look at Lidl opening in Hexham and think, how on earth can the town support another supermarket? But I guess Lidl has done its homework and thinks that the town can support that. But I suppose in a way it's good that Hexham does have a kind of broad supermarket offer, because at least it keeps the spend in the town. In many towns of Hexham's size, you might only have possibly a co-op or some other kind of single supermarket, and in fact you end up with half the people in the town driving completely out of town somewhere else to go and spend. So it would be interesting to know how many of the people in Hexham combine a shop at Waitrose or Tesco with a kind of mooch around the other parts of the town. I suspect having the free parking does help on that score. As free parking is no panacea. I always make the point that it's no good having free parking if when you park for free there's then nothing in the town to go and enjoy. But in Hexham's case, I think it does help that you can park in the Wentworth. You can, I think it's 4 hours in the blue zone or whatever it is, or the white zone. I lose track of it all. Anyway, you can park there and you can go into Waitrose, you can go and have lunch, and you can have a wander up to town. And I think Hexham is quite a good town from that point of view, because it's compact. But I appreciate as well, one of the things again that was raised in the workshop yesterday is that it can be a bit of a canny climb up the hill if you're not maybe someone who is as kind of agile as you might be. So all those kind of issues are important too. Looking at are there ways that you can improve the flow of people around the town, make it more easy to get around? Are there places where you need more seats maybe? Because in some cases it might be that actually an older person really struggles to get from one place to another if there's no kind of seat for them to pause at halfway through. So again, we talked about seating a lot, because it's really important in terms of accessibility, but also in terms of encouraging people to kind of sit and linger and enjoy the atmosphere of the town.
Mm. And an important issue also is, you know, we've got visitors of all sorts and all nationalities and everything coming to Hexham. But as you say, the accessibility for people who are sort of differently abled is really important. Did that come up at all?
It did, yes. I suppose, you know, any town that is kind of on a hill is, with all the car parks down below, is inherently kind of quite a challenge for some people, and it's, you know, it's why you can't just say, oh, let's clear all the parking out of the marketplace, because of course you need to keep accessibility for those who do need to kind of drive up there and be close to things. So yeah, I'm not quite sure kind of what the right balance is, because, you know, I think sometimes we do hear that often businesses in a town centre will perceive that more people are getting there by car than actually are, and in fact, you know, often the proportion of people who walk there or go in the bus, you know, is higher than they expect. So so it's why some town centres are kind of you know, overly geared towards traffic in a way that isn't always justified when you unpack the data. And in fact, data is one of the things that we talked about a lot as well, because again, we don't really have any footfall data for Hexham. It's not tracked on a regular basis, so we don't know kind of how many people are coming and how they're moving around the town. So you know, it might be that in the future the town council or the county council thinks that actually it'd be really useful if we could invest in some footfall data to start to understand a bit more about how people are using the town, who's using the town, you know, and to demonstrate as well the impact of things that you might do. So we talked about late night shopping, for example, and I know it's been tried before, and sometimes businesses are a bit reluctant or skeptical. But if you were to hold a late night shopping event, you know, and in fact it you know, it resulted in a big increase in sales and footfall, if you have data for that, that's really powerful. And you can say, look, we've got proof that it increased footfall on that evening by 20% compared to the same time a week earlier.
Yeah, data is really crucial, and as you say, I think, you know, historically, often decisions have been made on gut feeling, you know, rather than having the actual data to hand. We've got a national data centre in Newcastle as part of the university, you know, who do projects in Newcastle and, you know, quite big cities. And, you know, I'm sure there's no reason why that sort of data collection couldn't happen in Hexham, because I think it'd be really useful.
Yeah, it could indeed, and certainly, again, it's one of the themes that often emerges in my High Street Task Force work. As the High Street Task Force, it pulls together various partner organisations, one of which is it's Springboard, who do all the footfall cameras. And so when you see kind of stories in the media about footfall, it's using those Springboard cameras. But of course, these days you've got other methods of collecting footfall too. So I know some places that are using mobile phone data to kind of track people's movements, and that is an alternative way of getting a kind of getting a understanding of how people are using your place.
Anonymized data, of course. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Yes, it's all done in a way that it's not showing that Mr. So and so is going to Waitrose and then going to the county hotel for a pint or whatever. You know, it's yes. It might tell you a few things about I said demographics perhaps, but it's largely anonymized. Yeah,
top level sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, top level stuff. Yes. So again, if you have a gut feeling that you don't have young people using your town, that kind of data can start to could give you some insights into who is coming in.
Yeah. So you know, thinking positively, Graham, as you say, if you were to come back to Hexham in, let's say, 3 years, give a little bit of time, what do you think, what would you hope to see?
Well, what would I hope to see? I would hope to see Marks and Spencer still there. I would hope to see the bus station site developed, or at least in the process of development, because I think as long as I've been kind of reading the Hexham Courant, it's been talking about building a link through to the co-op as it then was, and I think some kind of connection there is useful. Again, it wouldn't be a kind of shopping centre or a shopping arcade these days probably, but it would, you know, it's crying out for some kind of it's crying out for some kind of mixed use scheme that kind of contributes positively to the town centre, you know, blend. Equally, I would like to see work having started on the Beale site, as certainly kind of when you kind of can't walk through from the bottom, you realise how important Beale's was as a thoroughfare as well. The way that you could kind of come in at the back and walk through onto 4th Street, or pop out at the side into the car park, and you and of course when the store's closed, you don't have any of those links anymore. So I think if you can turn Beale's into something that is you know, kind of more permeable, that would be good for the town and the movement too, in making it much easier to get from the Wentworth car park, you know, up into the heart of the town centre. And I suppose generally I would like to see you know, even more independence. I'd like to see the town looking kind of really clean and colourful, with plenty of flowers and things going on, and lots of events, so that, you know, if you come into Hexham, you can almost guarantee that every weekend there'll be something going on that is attractive and interesting, and that is kind of celebrating kind of Hexham's quality of place and distinctiveness.
So Graham, just to end then, if you were to be starting your own business on a high street in Hexham or elsewhere in 2022, what sort of business would it be to be successful?
Yeah, again, I was flagging these things in the workshop yesterday, and the phrase that I used is that you need to be compelling, not boring. So it was the boss of Poundland, I think, who posted that on LinkedIn a few years ago, and it's a phrase that I like, and I borrowed it. But effectively, it doesn't matter what it doesn't matter what it is that you do, as long as you do it well. And so I went and visited the Grateful Bread yesterday, for example, in Market Street, and it's a lovely business, really quality sourdough and things, and a nice looking frontage and a warm welcome. And so, you know, it's doing all the things right. It's got a distinctive product. It's got really good customer service. You know, it's quite savvy when it comes to its marketing and building kind of loyalty online as well. And so, you know, all those kind of things are really important. You don't have to sell online, but certainly make use of all those kind of online channels to drive footfall. And it's something I do a lot of in Durham and Chesley Street, encouraging businesses to get on Facebook, to get on Twitter, to get on Instagram, to claim their Google listing. And it's borne out by the number of times that I'll go into a shop and someone will say, "Oh, Graham, someone came in today saying they'd seen me on Facebook," you know, or they'd seen your post on Twitter and had been encouraged to come in. So it does work.
Graham, it's really interesting to hear, you know, what you've got to say, and hopefully you'll be banging the drum for rural town centres, market towns nationally when you go to your working party meetings and things. And thank you very much for sharing your ideas and your thoughts on Hexham with Hexhamtv. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.